So let's select the joint new, and we're going to correct our weighting. So I'm going to just go into the front perspective because it's a little easier to see. And with the joint new selected, I'm going to go select vertex mode. And bounding select a bunch of vertexes. Go into weighting and select adjust weights. And now I can just, holding down my mouse button, slide to the side and reduce all that weighting. We can also take this weighting probably down a little bit, like to 50%. Okay, so that looks like the type of weighting I would actually want for that new joint. That looks better. So I can come over here to the Deformers tab and just drag this joint new out of its second normalizing folder into our original normalizing folder. Now that this normalizing folder is empty, I can delete it. And now we've got joint new sitting in the normalizing folder with all the other previous joints. And let's take a look at the effect now. Where do we stand? Okay, we've got the joint root, and you can see we still got that painted. I'll just go into perspective. We still got that, custom painted weighting on it. And the joint 2, joint 3, joint 4. But joint 4 has still got the weighting that encompassed its old volume when we first did the bind right to the end of the cylinder. And then we have joint new, which we have got the correct weighting for it. So how do we fix this to tell joint 4 back off, I'm now in control? What we can do is select joint new and say over here in the weighting menu, isolate weights. And what this is going to do is it's going to say any weights here outside of my influence, zero them. And keep the weights on what we've got selected. So I'll hit isolate weights. And now, because we're in a normalizing folder, you can see that it's removed the weight that this guy had from the other joint, the joint beside it. So now we've got the correct weight all the way down. And we didn't disturb any of the custom weighting and painting that we did on our character. So if we were looking at a character that, you've fixed things in the legs and the head and the shoulder, and all of that's upstream from where we've just added the new joint, we're not going to affect any of that weighting. And we can just check this by going into advanced OpenGL mode, leaving setup, so we get our deformations back. And we can go ahead and test, see what's happening. Yep, it's bending the way we'd want. And we still have our, strangely painted, custom painted weighting up at the top of the cylinder. Just going to undo that. Let's go back into setup mode. So I'm just going to show one last effect here of adding new joints. And that is what happens if you add a joint. This joint was added at the end of the hierarchy. What happens if you add a joint in the middle of the hierarchy? And that gives you a bit of a different effect. So I'm going to show you that now. Let's select the root joint again. Go up. Choose the skeleton command. Again, under tool properties, I'm going to insert. And this time I'm going to insert up here. Okay, so we've broken that joint into an extra joint. Space to drop the skeleton tool. And let's see where we stand. We'll go into vertex map mode. We'll take a look. Okay, we've got our custom painted stuff. Okay, there's our joint that we did the insert on. And of course, it's lost its previous naming. It used to be joint 3. Now it's just called joint. So I'll rename it back to joint 3. And we've got locator, which is our new joint that was just added. So I'm going to rename that guy to joint new middle, because that guy we added into the middle of the hierarchy. Okay, so again, we have the problem. Joint new middle does not have any weight map associated with it. It wasn't part of the bind. So let's go ahead and bind it. We'll shift click on the cylinder, come down to deformers, bind it, and do a heat bind. And it's assumed its weighting goes right back to the beginning of the cylinder because we've just bound it in isolation again. But you'll notice something has happened differently this time, and that is it hasn't created a new normalizing folder. If we come over here, you can see it's added joint new middle into our existing normalizing folder. And I think this is because we added it in between two joints that already had weight maps and were associated with this normalizing folder. So it said, oh, this guy, because he's sandwiched between two other joints that are under the normalizing folder, should also go into the same normalizing folder automatically. So that kind of saves us a step of dragging something out of the second normalizing folder. And then to fix the weighting, we do the same process as before. So we'll go into vertex. I'll just view it from the front for ease. Where is our new joint? Oh, it's down here. Yeah, there's joint new middle. So I'll just take the vertexes ahead of it, go to weighting, adjust my weights, and do that. You could also paint them out if you wanted to. That's just a different way of adjusting your weights explicitly on a vertex by vertex basis. Okay, that's probably good enough. Now, let's just, for giggles, let's just take this down to 50%, thereabouts. Okay, good enough. But again, we've got the situation where the joint ahead of it has got weighting right across both of those joints. So we're going to go ahead and hit isolate weights. And now we've got, I'll enter perspective. Again, we've got our custom painted stuff, our split, our new joint, and down the line. So there you go. We've added another new joint into an existing bound skeleton hierarchy. And if you find any little weight issues, and often when you do a bind, you're going to find there's some bleed that happens to other places in your mesh. You can see a little example of it here, where we've got a bit of pink coloration down there, and again, you can fix that just using your weighting tool. So you should expect, even with a pretty clean heat bind, that you're going to have to do a little bit of manual tweaking anyway. So I hope you found that helpful, and I'll try to do a few more videos on some basic rigging and solving of problems, because I'm certainly not a guru like Rich or Matt, and so I get myself into a lot of trouble and have to find ways to get out of it. So see you next time.